The just concluded presidential elections in the United States with the re-election of President Barack Obama, the showcase of democracy in action. What lessons can we learn from the American experience to build on our own gains from the 2010 presidential elections? Automation for the first time, which led to clean and honest elections. Are we just as politically mature as the Americans? What reforms do we need to put in place which will enable our people to choose better public servants who will serve our country? And joining us tonight is Professor Prospero De Vera, Vice President for Public Affairs at the University of the Philippines and one of the country's most respected political analysts. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, after President Obama was declared winner of the elections, he called on the American people to unite as one, and he said, "We are more than just blue states or red states. We are the great United States." How should our leaders take the cue from this statement?
Well, his statement is important because the last election was very divisive, very partisan, and very close in terms of the run-up to the election. So you need a process to bring contending forces together for the country. This would be instructive in our case because we have to learn that elections come and go, but national interests always prevail. So candidates, winners and losers at the end of the day must bow to the will of the people and must move forward to work together for the good of the country.
What do you think are the most important lessons that we should learn from their elections? Let's focus on how the campaign is run during the U.S. elections.
Well, for candidates, the most important lesson is that you must start early, you must plan early, and you must use scientific methods to design your campaign plan and run your campaign. If you notice, Barack Obama and the Democratic Party started about a year and a half ago in putting together a tremendous database of voters, and they mined the information and the statistics at their disposal to target very specific demographics. So every slice of the demographic pie was used by the to target, for example, minorities, to target African Americans, and they did this on every state so that they gain a very distinct advantage over the Republicans in getting as many votes as possible for their candidates. So planning is important, starting early is important, scientific use of data is very important for candidates. And of course, you must be very issue-oriented. And you must be able to project your candidate so that the people will warm up to him. At the exit polls, the American public said that while 60% said the elections was basically an elections where the problem was economic, they saw both Romney and Obama as having the same statistical qualification to become president. But the most important point for Obama was that people felt that he had empathy with the poor and with the disenfranchised groups. And that was what made in many areas.
So after watching closely through the process of the U.S. presidential elections, what can we take away from this to make, on the local scene here, how to make, be better? What things can we take away from that?
Well, we actually should run an election better than the United States because in the U.S., elections are state-run, meaning the responsibility to run elections is not in the federal government, it is in state governments. So every state would have its own system of developing ballots, inputting automation at its disposal, and also doing the counting. So the probability that you will have an even completeness and quality of the electoral process in the U.S. is actually tremendous. But they did a tremendous job in doing it, which means we should learn from the lessons of the United States in terms of preparing for automation much, much earlier. One defect in the Philippines is that we start talking about automation when election is so close.
So talking about automation, it will play next year in the midterm elections. Has it solved completely the perennial problem of fraud?
Compared to manual, of course, it's a tremendous improvement. But automation, even at its best, will always have problems. Even in the US, no? Some sectors will always be disenfranchised. There will always be problems in the use of technology. So the key there is we must understand what automation brings and what it does not bring, and plug the gaps where automation has problems.
So with regards to the general registration of voters with biometrics, do you think this has already solved the problem of flying voters?
In some areas it has. I heard that in Maguindanao, for example, they had taken out as many as 100,000 of spurious names in their roll. So that is a tremendous achievement compared to the previous election. I also registered last October 31 at the Quezon City Hall and found it a very interesting experience. And so it was very fast. It took me only 15 minutes to finish the process. So it is improving. I don't know how successful it is across the whole country, but there are spots where it is very important and very interesting.
Sir, let's talk a little bit about campaign spending. In the U.S., the report said they spent about $6 billion. Here in the Philippines, the spending is still a little bit high. What are your thoughts on this, on the campaign spending during the elections?
Well, the cost in the U.S. is high because you have a bigger geographic area and you have a presidential campaign that you have to run from the East Coast to the West Coast. So costs will always be higher in the U.S. compared to the Philippines. I think the difference is they're able to control campaign finance better than us. We have to do a better job controlling the campaign finance and the spending of candidates because it creates a very uneven field where those who have less money are disadvantaged versus those who have more money.
Yeah, talking about disadvantages, also in advantages, there is a rising challenge to the issue of political dynasty. Somehow, since 1986, there has been no law to enforce this constitutional provision. The result are people feel political power has been limited to a few and the political arena is not a level playing field. Is our Congress ready to pass a bill which will enforce limits to a political dynasty?
Well, of course, I support any attempt to put into place a law that will address political dynasties. But I have serious doubts that it can be achieved fast because there's an inherent disincentive for Congress to pass a political dynasty law, given the fact that there's so many dynasties in Congress. To me, we should not pin our hopes in addressing political dynasties exclusively on a political dynasty law. There are existing laws that if we enforce very, very, very strongly would already open up and level the playing field, like campaign finance, for example, like addressing issues about political ads on television. If we are able to enforce this very seriously, it will already put in place a momentum that will address some of the problems while we are waiting for a political bill.
So another issue which raises doubts on our political maturity is the party list system. Somehow the true spirit of representation of marginalized sectors has not been followed to the letter. The COMELEC has started a cleansing process. How can this be sustained to ensure those elected are not multimillionaires claiming to represent the poor?
Well, the party list problem is an old problem that actually started when the Supreme Court issued a decision making sure or saying that the party list system is only for the marginalized. That is a problem because the party list law does not define what marginalized means. And so therefore, it gave tremendous power to the COMELEC to determine who qualifies and who does not qualify. And the past COMELECs did not do a very good job in taking out the spurious party list. I congratulate the current COMELEC leadership for being very strong in taking out some of the party list groups. The long-term need is really for Congress to the party list law. Number one, to define what marginalized mean, and number two, putting in place safeguards that will kick out automatically or disqualify certain party list groups. We should not rely on the COMELEC exclusively, because what if the next COMELEC leadership is not as strong as the group led by Chairman Brillantes? Then we go back to the problem of a lot of party lists that do not represent important interests.
Sir, any final thoughts on what else needs to be done to better prepare ourselves in the next elections next year?
Well, it is important that we look at the next election not just as an activity of the COMELEC, not just an activity of political parties of candidates, but as a process that should involve everyone. We in the University of the Philippines have signed recently a memorandum of agreement with the COMELEC to use all our campuses and all our groups to help in the electoral process. We are negotiating with television networks to also do the same. Everyone must pitch in to make sure we have a credible, clean, and an empowering election in 2013.
Okay, on that, joining us tonight, that was Professor Prospero De Vera, Vice President of the Public Affairs of the University of the Philippines and a top political analyst and strategist. Thank you, sir.